Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at our ASC Counseling and Therapy panel. We had a lot bigger turnout than we thought we would, which is a fantastic problem to have. I'm so sorry for those of you that are standing. I know the room is a little bit cramped. We have a fantastic group of panelists. With us, we have licensed professional counselors, licensed clinical social workers, licensed master social workers, and licensed marriage and family therapists. So they're going to all have about 5 to 10 minutes to describe the following questions. So they're going to talk about their individualized counseling and therapy educational background, as well as what it takes to be independently licensed in their discipline. They're going to describe their current position as well, highlighting how leadership and communication are important to their role. Additionally, they're going to go forward and describe some rewarding and challenging aspects of their job, what various level, entry level and internship opportunities are within the industry, and then just advice that they would broadly offer to their students. If you guys have any friends that are really interested in watching this panel, we are recording it as well. So just so you guys know. So Kathy is going to go first. So everyone, if you just do a brief introduction and then just go forth with the questions. And I know a lot of you guys have stuff for us to find, for us to credit and courses and such. So if you would be okay with meeting me afterwards, I'd be happy to go. All right, perfect. Do you want me to stand or? No, you can sit. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. So my name is Kathy Trujillo. I'm an LMS from a licensed master social worker. So I am actually not currently providing therapy or counseling. I'm a medical social worker at the moment. I have an undergrad actually in political science from the U of A, and then I have an MSW. So I got a degree in political science, which qualifies you to do like everything and nothing all at the same time. So I actually went to law school and had zero interest in that. And at the end of my first year, when all my buddies were getting jobs at like restaurants and stuff, I was just really miserable. Didn't want to be there. I knew I was taking up a seat for somebody who wanted to be there. And so CPS was having a one-day like hiring fair, and you could get a job on the spot. I thought, I'm going to do this for the summer and see if I like it. And if I do, then maybe, this is my answer. And if I hate it, then. And so I went and worked for CPS, and everybody was like, I hate this job. And I was like, I love this job. I loved it. It was the most interesting work. I immediately realized how important it was. And I immediately was like, why did I become a social worker? I absolutely love this work. So it's very much a job for the young. I was an investigator. I ended up staying with CPS. I dropped out of law school. I had to meet with the dean of the law school here, and he's like, you really know what you're doing? And I'm like, yes, I'm breaking my mother's heart, but I'm going to be happy to do what I'm doing. So I ended up, I did ongoing management for a year, and then I was an investigator for 4 years after that, and I loved it. And then I actually went from that into forensic interviewing. I'm hoping that you see all the range of things you can do with the social work degree. So I was a forensic interviewer for a year, and then I actually moved into the federal child welfare side, working with unaccompanied minors that are in the federal custody. So these are a lot of the kids that are currently held at the border. And I worked in that capacity for another 5 years. I ended up actually running a shelter here with unaccompanied minors. And then I shifted over to the medical social work world. So I sort of reached, once I got married and started having children of my own, child welfare was failed, and then I wasn't as young as I used to be. So I decided to move into a different side of social work. So now I work for Banner. I did for a short time work for Hewlett River Healthcare, and then I shifted over to Banner Healthcare, and I worked inpatient for 3 years in the hospitals. I loved that work too. I think I love crazy, fast-paced. That's my fit, and And now I work in home care, which is also really fascinating to me. But now I go into people's houses and provide social work referrals and assessments there. Some rewarding and challenging. So I think in terms of rewarding aspect of the job is that I also teach social work courses, and the one thing I tell students is that being a social worker, you are incredibly blessed. Because there are few jobs in this world where what you do today will still matter when someone's leaving. Like my husband does telecom, something with wires, and I'm sure what he does really makes people happy because their phone works or whatever, but it's not going to affect someone in 50 years, probably.
where in social work, a decision you make, and this is something to take serious, right? A decision you make today, a call you make on somebody's life today, will still matter in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years. You know, you can change the trajectory of someone's life. And I think that's what's really amazing about it. But then there's a lot of pressure that comes with that too. So various entry-level jobs or internship opportunities. So social workers at the entry level, certainly in hospitals and in healthcare. So medical social work overall is largely done by master's level social workers. But at the entry level, hospitals have, so in the banner system, they're called, I want to say they're called transitional navigators. So in the hospital system, we do a lot of discharge planning, trying to figure out how to get somebody safely to their next, wherever that is going to be, whether it's a rehab facility or going home with services or whatever that might be. And so our bachelor's level social workers help us with that process and getting all of those things in place. And so and really, there's so many social work opportunities. I will say one thing that I think is a great opportunity in healthcare is that there is a good opportunity to, certainly at the master's level in any capacity, the earning potential is high. And I'm also not someone who subscribes to the idea of the poor social worker and that you need to be broke forever. I think there's a lot of great opportunities in social work, especially if you're willing to work hard and move up. And so I think healthcare is a great opportunity for that. What advice? So I kind of came up with 3 pieces of advice. And so the first one is, and this is not like the funniest, sexiest piece of advice, but it's really, really important. And that is, in social work, you have to make a lot of really difficult decisions that you don't like. And one of the things that's sort of inherent to a lot of people in social work is that we're people pleasers, right? So when I was working for CPS, I would legitimately like my client and legitimately assess them to be unsafe and need to move forward with severing the rights, right? And so I would really recommend that you really understand the best practices of your chosen field, your industry, understand our code of ethics, right, the NASW code of ethics, and understand the policies of your agency that you're working for, because it's really important to remain objective, right? So you're going to have really difficult decisions in front of you, and you're going to say, I don't know what to do because I really like this person. At the end of the day, the policy will be your out. And you can say, listen, I really like you as a person and I really have come to respect you. However, this is the policy and this is what I have to stick to. And if you stick to that with every single person, you will avoid a lot of problems, including if you go into management. If you go into management, remain objective and apply policies the same as much as you can. There's always gray in social work, but as much as you can. My second piece of advice is to definitely find your fit. I was someone who always thought I would want to do therapy. So my first foray into medical social work at Gila River was to do therapy. And I very quickly figured out that was not a fit for me. I think you have to have a very specific sort of personality, and that it wasn't a fit for me. I thought I was going to have a panic attack. So these ladies could, you know, I think they would agree that when you're doing counseling and therapy, you really have to be, there's a certain amount of hands-offness and helping to guide people without necessarily telling them what to do. I'm more of a very hands-on, like, what's your problem? What do we got to do? Who can we call? What can we say? And that's sort of my personality, and it wasn't a fit for me. So I would say find your fit. And the third thing, and this is sort of a general thing, is never underestimate the value of just being easy to manage. And that doesn't mean that from time to time you're not going to need to break a little hell or whatever. But when I managed employees, there was always those people who were constantly gossiping or constantly causing trouble or constantly just negative and complaining. If you find yourself in a position where you're constantly complaining, please do yourself a favor and find a new job, because our industry is so full of people who are really sucking the life out of social work. And people will say, oh, the ones who are happy and excited about what they do, they're brand new social workers. That's not true. I've been doing this work for 15 years. I love what I do. And I'm so excited. And every patient I see, I really still try to bring that sort of fresh, I'm here for you attitude. And if you can't do that, then you need to find something else. And as a manager, you just really want people who show up, who do their job, who don't cause trouble, you know, like within the colleagues, and just do really good work and are dedicated to the work. So if you're just sort of easy to be around, sometimes there's a lot of that. So that would be my, did I go over? I told them to pull my hair if I go over 2 minutes. So I think I'm with it by 10 minutes. So there you go. Awesome. All right. I know on your sheet
if you have one, it says Alexis. She's not here. So myself and Shelly came as a replacement for Alexis tonight. My name's Natalie Anderson. I'm the Assistant Clinical Director at Desert Rain Behavioral Health Services, and I have my LCSW. I actually went to ASU and got my bachelor's of social work in 1999 and my master's of social work in 2001, and have been practicing ever since. Mostly doing direct practice with victims of trauma, children mostly, victims of sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and witnesses, children who have witnessed. My work has varied from shelters. I worked in the Child Crisis Center with children who were moved from their homes and lived in shelters while they were determining if they could go back home safely or be adopted. And then I also worked at Child Health as a trauma therapist there, working with victims of trauma. And my last job before here was with the court at Cradle to Cradle, which is a fairly new program within the last 6 years, working with infants and toddlers in the court system, and then been working on elevation care. Like I said, currently I'm at Desert Rain. We mostly work with tribal clients from ages, gosh, we've got young ones up to elderly, so the vast majority. Social work degree, you can do a lot of different things with it. In addition to my LCSW, I'm also endorsed as a infant toddler mental health specialist, and I went to a school for 2 years to also get some further education on that. And I'm also an RPT, which is a registered therapist. Most of my work when I work with clients is doing play therapy. Most children, especially younger children, use play as their language, and so that's the majority of the work that I do. In this new position, I have a very small caseload. I'm mostly managing therapists. We've got 20 therapists underneath me, or I'm providing individual supervision, group supervision. A challenging position. So now that I'm in this position, I'd say a challenging role as a supervisor is when you have staff that I think it's good to come in and acknowledge when you don't know something. I think it can be harder as a supervisor to manage staff who just act like they know. It's a lot easier to come in and say, I don't know what to do with this client, or I need guidance. And a lot of times you know what the answer is, you just need a little bit of guidance. So I would definitely say one of my pieces of advice is supervision. Use your supervisor, go weekly if you can, and really staff those cases so that you can kind of process the things that are going on around you. A lot of what we see is really hard. And in therapy, doing direct practice, especially if you're managing and working with clients of trauma, you are their container. So they are throwing up all of their trauma onto you, and you're containing that, and you need a place for that to go. So self-care is also, and I know this is like beat down into the self-care, but it's true. Figuring out whatever that niche is for you, it's not always exercise. Sometimes it's going to your own therapist or utilizing supervision to really process cases. But really having somebody to talk to about these cases is going to help, because it's just going to keep you alive if you hold it all in and you contain it and have nowhere to put it. Let's see. We have several different jobs within Desert Rain. I don't know if Shelly's going to talk a little bit more about that too, but we do have entry-level therapists that do individual counseling, family therapy, group therapy. We have mentors and behavior coaches as well. Shelly runs the intern program, so she'll talk a little bit about that. I guess another piece of advice would be, because if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. So that's another challenge I have when supervising. Sometimes there's things not in charts, and I'm like, maybe, and I'm like, oh, I did that. No, I didn't. It's not in the chart. So make sure that when you're talking to clients, whether it's phone calls, emails, whatever, that you document it and print it and put it in the charts. So then if you say it happened, then it's not.
I also work at Desert Rain. My name is Shelly Jensen, and I'm a licensed American family therapist. I did my bachelor's program here at ASU. And I started my bachelor's program in psychology, thinking that I wanted to work with people and help people. And then as I started taking my psychology classes, I was like, I hate learning about the eyeball, and I don't know why. That's learning about the eyeball. So I met with the advisors here and worked with them about that. And then 3 years into my bachelor's program, switched my degree to family and social dynamics because I didn't have to learn about the eyeball. So I could actually learn about things that I was interested in, about how families interacted and children's attachment styles and children's behaviors, and that's what I wanted to do. So the reason I share that is because if you're in a program that you're not loving, go talk to your advisor and figure out why. Do what you love. You're spending hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars here, I know. So do something that you love and take the time to find it. None of your time is going to be wasted here. I don't feel like my first few years was wasted in my psychology program. I did learn stuff. I learned about myself. So then when I switched it and had to do a little bit more classes, it was fine with me. So advocate for yourself, find out stuff, find out what your passion is, like Kathy said as well. She thought she wanted to do therapy and then realized she didn't. So then I stayed at ASU and I went into marriage and family therapy. If you want to be a therapist, clinical, you can be a social worker, counselor, marriage and family therapist. Those are the 3 master's programs that support those jobs. I chose marriage and family therapy because I was in my mid-30s when I started my master's program, and I had 4 children and a part-time job and a house to live in. It was the shortest program at only 18 months, so that was the reason why I did it. Now the programs are pretty similar, so it doesn't matter as much. But I was happy with that. And again, I don't think that the program and the school is as important as what you're passionate about. I was always passionate about trauma and wanted to work and focus on trauma. And you can do that in any of the school settings, the different settings. You can find out what your passion is. Like Natalie said, she did some training after when she figured out what she really loved and what her passion was. So outside of college, I've done tons of trainings on science with trauma. So that's been beneficial. So I got my master's degree at ASU in the marriage and family therapy. I was the first cohort of the new program here, and so that was kind of cool. Graduated in 2008 and have been working as a therapist, direct client therapist since. Got my hours at a new lease and at Desert Rain, and then continued at Desert Rain working as a one-on-one therapist, family therapist, doing groups, stuff like that. And then got promoted to the position I'm in now, which I'm an intern supervisor, so I'm a clinical supervisor working with interns to help master's level students. I love that. I love being able to teach them about our profession and to have great experiences with clients because I love the work I do and I love being able to teach that to other people. I also do a Desert Rain intensive program where I work with trauma clients who come to the office and they stay from 9 until 5 p.m. So I'm with a small group of trauma clients all day long. Because what I found with clients a lot is that it's hard for them to come and talk about their trauma, and we work with the Native Americans who have a lot of trauma within their house still, so it's hard for them to come and work on their trauma and then go back to an environment that was chaotic. So giving them a place to stay and be safe the entire day has been very rewarding and beneficial for them. So that's been a really cool program. At Desert Rain, we also have a Z-Drops program where we work with 0 to 5-year-olds and also clients with developmental needs, autism, mental retardation, and stuff like that. We also have behavior coaches and mentors. The staff that provide those services are associate level or bachelor's level. You don't have to have a master's degree to do those 2 first off. But you do have to, you used to not have to have any schooling for that, but now you do. I think you actually have to have a bachelor's degree in behavioral health and any ages and So behavior coaching and mentoring is a great way to kind of get into the field while you're working on your master's program. If you are going to go on and try to do clinical work or be a psychologist or something like that. Challenging aspects of my job. I don't know specifically, but rewarding aspect is when a client gets it and you see their life change for good and they have a paradigm shift internally. And you hear positive things about the work you've done with them. That's really awesome. My job has meaning every single day. I help people every single day. I help them to find joy, and what better job is there than that to help people find joy? So, I know one thing that's kind of been a challenge through my career experience, though, is when I go to different trainings and learn different ways, I work with trainers to kind of learn how to do that job better, or use that tool better. And I would find myself really trying to do it exactly like them in order to be good at it. And I finally realized, like, I'm never going to be like that person. I need to do it the way Shelley Jensen does it. And feel good and confident about that. And when I accepted that and got the pieces that I needed from what they shared with me, and then used it Shelley Jensen's way, I was much more successful. And it took a lot less energy. So it's super important that you figure out what you want, and make sure you're not trying to please your mom or your dad, but you want to do what you want to do. And then also, as far as advice, it's super important in this field, even though it's huge, especially in the Valley, if you're working in the metropolitan area. Even though it's a huge population of people who do behavioral health clinical work, it's also very small, and you don't want to burn bridges, and you want to make sure that your professional relationships are kept, and that they're respectful, and that the other person is always important, and you also want to make sure that client care comes first and it's a priority. Clients that you work with might come back around 8 years later or whatever, they also share stuff with each other. So even though it's huge, it's also very small. So you want to carry yourself in a professional, ethical way at all times, and be open and kind. And Kathy was talking about how she gets frustrated with management, with people being dramatic, and maybe starting off it. I found that the Lorraine medical staff there is super positive and awesome, and don't have a lot of drama, and you don't have a lot of things, and everybody's super supportive of one another. And I love that. I love that about our job, and I love that everybody cares and that everybody wants everybody to be successful. That's what it needs to be in order for clients to have success, and to be happy to do. I think that's all. How's it going? Hey guys, my name is Ryan Jordan. I am an LSW, licensed master social worker. My undergrad was, I got 3 degrees. I got psychology, family and human development, and women and gender studies. So I kind of like mixed all of those into a big pot and decided that social work was kind of the best option out of all of that. That's mainly because I really believe in treating the whole person, meaning that we're not just talking about the individual. We have to consider the system around them, and that includes institutions and the larger societal piece that they fit into. So advocacy is a really big part of social work. In social work here at ASU, the master's program, you can go down 2 paths. You can do the direct route, or you can go PAC, and that's public administration, yeah, something like that. And so pretty much that, we still are taking policy classes is what that means, so that we're really involved in
You will be taking those classes no matter what. Your first year and your second year is where you start specializing in what exactly you want to do. But if you do go into the master's program and Kristen Cinema is still teaching, you could get classes taught by her, which is awesome. So that's the kind of stuff that you get in social work, is it really brings in kind of like everything under a microscope instead of just kind of the individual person alone. Currently, I am a therapist, an infant and early childhood therapist at Touchstone Health Services. So that means I work with the little guys. So I work 0 to 5. Usually that means I probably work up to 8 or 9 years old, depending on the amount of trauma they have. They usually get sent down to us. We really focus on attachment and relationships as a way of healing. I love my job a whole lot. It's not what I expected to get into, but I really appreciate preventative work, kind of like what we were talking about, like that one thing you do can change somebody's life in 50 years. That's super true of infants and early childhood, because you're literally getting them at that prime developmental age at 2 to 3, and it can really change the entire trajectory of a whole family's life. So I really love that job. That's what's most rewarding, is seeing those changes. So we have child family team meetings, so CFTs, and when you get to look back at your notes and you get to see your first CFT, the problems are just like aggression, getting kicked out of school, they have no emotional regulation, they're having meltdowns 5, 7 times a day, and then you're at your current CFT and the family is actually functioning and they're getting along and the child's doing well in school. Like, that is just like the most rewarding thing, and that can happen in such a short amount of time, really. The most challenging part of your job is obviously kind of the work that is therapy. So hearing all the trauma, hearing all the hard stuff that you do have to hold in, and then hopefully you go to a great supervisor so that you can take care of that and unload yourself a little bit. That's one of the hardest parts, but the other hard part of our jobs, which is why I think it's really important that you start understanding other fields and how they work, is starting to connect and communicate with other services. So I never thought that I was going to be in so many schools, DCS courts, going all over the place with families. And so having them communicate, having to go to a school that's not trauma-informed, having to go to daycare that are definitely not trauma-informed, and then if you're working with adults, having to go to their court cases, they might be having to go to DCS. It's all really complicated and they all affect each other. It's going to be really hard for you to work with somebody if you're totally not even acknowledging the fact that they might be losing their child the next day, but you're just working on, their individual therapy. That's why you really got to look at the whole person and what's going on in their whole life. And that can be really hard when other institutions are really conflicting and not wanting to work with you, but you got to get really good at figuring out how to say things nicely and try and really be an advocate for your client. That's the most important piece. At Touchstone, for entry-level jobs, I would probably say we have care coordinators or case managers. Those only require a bachelor's. And they do probably 10 times the amount of work that I do. They are so amazing and such hard workers. I have a really, really great team. Communication is key. They're always connecting, always talking. And if you think that you're not going to be doing like therapeutic work as, coming out with your bachelor's as a case manager, you're wrong. You're building rapport. You are that bridge with the family through everything. You're with them after they've had a really bad moment at court, or they really needed to talk a little bit more about what happened in therapy. You are that ear, and you do have to have a clinical piece to that. And so that's most all of my care coordinators I'm like losing, because they're all deciding to go get their master's, because what they're doing is so therapeutic that they are wanting to go get that education and make that official and then come back as a therapist. So that shows you the kind of work that they're really passionate about and doing a really good job at. My broad kind of advice is get as much training done as possible so it doesn't stop after your master's. Just within my IACP program, I can get trained in PCIT, CPP, EMDR, DBT, Circle Security, SAM Tray. There's so much out there that if you are just going to go out of your master's and think, oh, I just need to kind of get those CEUs, which are continuing education credits. I'm just going to sit in this little 4-hour class and that's all I'm going to do. It's not going to turn out well for you. You really need to find something that you want to get extra trained in, that you really want to be specific about. I think that's part of good self-care, and that's best practice as well. If you know more about what you're doing and you're really well versed in it, it's not going to be so overwhelming to you. You're going to feel confident in what you're doing and always be able to fall back on those ethics and those foundational things that you're learning. So it does not stop at your master's level. Kind of going off of that, practice your documentation now. It's probably one of the pieces that is the most frustrating for people in our field. You have to learn how to write really good, concise notes in a timely manner, and that can be impossible when you have a full caseload. So learning how to collaboratively document, so that means you're doing it with the client, maybe at the kind of ending parts of your session, so you're not staying up till 8, 9, 10 o'clock finishing those notes or doing it over the weekend. That's what causes burnout. So if you are well trained and you know how to do your documentation, I don't ever go home and do my notes. I finish them at the end of every work day because I got a really good practice and documentation, and I don't have to bring it home, and that means I can enjoy my dinner and enjoy my life afterwards, and that's practicing good self-care. And then just get a great supervisor. They make all the difference in the world. So.
Hello, I'm Alexia Pullman, and then also Courtney and I, we're going to bounce off of each other because we've had the exact same experience.
So I'm Courtney Brunner, and I'm at our Dover office, and then Alexia is at our Tempe office for the Arizona Marriage and Family Therapy Clinic. So we are licensed associate marriage and family therapists. We're super close to being done. Alexia is submitting next month for full licensure, and then I'm going to be submitting in May. So then we'll be fully licensed and not needing to be under supervision.
Yeah. The program that we actually went to was at ASU. We went to the Marriage and Family Therapy program. We were, I think, the 9th cohort, so it's great to see that there's the first cohort here. So it's an 18-month program. There's only about 20 to 24 students that are in your class, and they go through an interview process to get down to those numbers. You work with the same exact students in the cohort throughout the entire program, so you get to know everybody really, really well. And the first couple of months of the program are just basically training in the theories, learning about kind of the systemic nature of marriage and family therapy, and getting you ready to go into your practicum hours, which is your year-long internship. That is the next year. So a little bit about the systemic approach that marriage and family therapists use is that we like to look at all of the different pieces in a person's life. So oftentimes when we're working with an individual, we'll ask about their relationships with their families, their relationships maybe with their girlfriends or their husbands, or their siblings, something along those lines. We actually like to get as many people in the therapy room as possible because we find that there's the most opportunity for change when we get that opportunity. And we view that people have problems because they're stuck. We don't think labels on people. We don't like diagnosing with really heavy-handed diagnosis unless, it's necessary. But for the most part, we work on relationships and changing the dynamics in relationships.
And a lot of with factors that you like to gather just as much information about all of the different aspects of someone's life. There's a lot of times we'll find after our first session with someone, will kind of briefly describe what they feel like their problem is, and then the more that we kind of go into the different aspects, we kind of start connecting dots as to, okay, they have a lot of work stress going on, and we just both really liked the MFT program because it was very systemic, and and brought a lot of different pieces into that. So our current position, we're both full-time clinicians practicing therapists at the office area. So I run the Dover office, Alexia runs the Tempe office. At our sites, a lot of what we do is like, we see usually about 18 to 22 clients a week or so that's a pretty full caseload. There's a drug notes. I run our clinic Facebook page, so that's something that I really like doing and being able to post different articles, and something that I'm super passionate about is creating empathetic spaces for people. So whether that be in relationships or in family dynamics, just creating that space of understanding and empathy. So that's something that I like to kind of post about, and that's something that's super rewarding about our job. Right now we're both under supervision, so we also have supervision meetings once a week, sometimes twice a week, depending kind of on our need. And that's been something that's been really important as we've had such a full caseload for the last, we're going into our 4th year practicing. It's just to stay on top of when you start feeling burned out and when you start feeling that you're a little bit overwhelmed with staffing, just like everyone else has with your supervisor is really important.
A lot of our work at the private practice is with couples. So we work with married couples, we work with couples who are going through a divorce, we work with couples who are not married, we work with couples who are deciding to get married, just the whole range of relationship work. We do see some families and some individuals, but a lot of our emphasis is working with couples. And so we really like our systemic training that kind of led us to that, because there's a lot of evidence-based research and theories that we can apply to that work with couples. And we get to see kind of the trickle-down effect of improving relationships. So there's a married couple that comes in to see you and they're in distress and you're able to work through a lot of their problems with them. That's trickling down into the rest of their family, into the rest of their relationships, into their work experience, that kind of thing, because it really expands out into other areas of their life.
Another piece of that is all of our couples, families, and individuals are all willingly coming to therapy. So none of our clients are mandated by DCS or mandated by the court. At least one of our people always wants to be there because they make the initial call. Not always both partners of a couple or both all people in a family, but we do work with everyone who's willing to come to therapy.
Yeah, exactly. So some rewarding aspects, I would say, is just being able to facilitate change. I think that your role as a therapist, when someone is coming in to see you and it's private pay, they've obviously called to make this appointment specifically to see you. They're wanting change. They don't want to just walk in and just have someone to talk to about just how great their life is. People don't want to pay for that. Sometimes you get to that point and then the relationship stays the same, so you kind of maintain that progress. But facilitating change and seeing that change in relationships can be especially rewarding. As you've seen how much work you put into working with the couple, you see what they take home and apply at home. I think it can be kind of a big deal to see how much of an impact you're making on couples and relationships.
And mine was really similar to that as well. It's like one of my favorite things is working with a couple or a family who's really escalated in their first session, yelling, screaming, and I have to find some people out of the room and then just see like 5 or 6 sessions in that we can all at least stay in the room together. And then 10 sessions in, we can all see what your feelings. So that's one of my favorite things is just seeing different interactions happening between people. Because like Alexia said, that's absolutely been trickling into other aspects of their life. Because when they feel very overwhelmed in their relationships, then it can obviously then negatively impact different aspects. Their work, their relationship with their kids, other family relationships. So that's something that I love seeing too, is like just how that positively impacts all the different areas.
I think some of the challenging aspects of our job as a therapist is knowing that people are coming in to see change, and not everybody is ready for that change. So even though they might say, I want our relationship to be better, or I want to see this difference in our relationship, they may not be willing to put in that effort in the way that you're saying needs to be done, or the way that you're kind of guiding them. So you feel that pressure to see change in a couple's relationship, but then maybe they're not taking that home and applying it outside of the session. So I think that can just be challenging. But also you have to remember in those moments that it's not your job to make sure that they take this stuff home. It's their job, right? They come to see you for an hour, and then once that hour is over, all you can do is hope that they take that home and apply it, you know. I don't think of any other challenges at the top of my head.
So another challenge I've heard is just not to just work conflictly, and I don't mean physical work, I mean the emotional side of things. So a lot of times we're kind of the first and only people to hear about a physical altercation that happened between couples, something that happened in a family that we might have had to call DCF on. And so if you let yourself kind of think about that on your way home or when you get home or when you eat dinner, like that will really eat at you. So I know both of us have done a lot of self-care. That's everyone's favorite word in this field is like self-care of learning how to kind of leave that at the office. And now I would say I don't think about people from work more than like 2 minutes a day if I'm at home. So that's been a big shift from when I was an intern. So that's something that I found really challenging. But also letting myself, if I really am feeling overwhelmed about a client, like talking with my supervisor that night, she's always available. So really just using those resources has helped that and helps kind of me to be able to separate work and my personal life.
I think one other challenging aspect that I remembered, someone down there, I can't remember who said it, but they said that there are times when you really, really like a client and you still have to make a call. There are also times where you don't like a client and you still have to be warm and empathetic and compassionate and try and see where they're coming from. And so I think that that can be challenging at times, right? Because we're all people. We all like certain people. We all don't like certain personalities, right? And so sometimes that can be a conflict. I'm still Alexia, and when someone comes in and I'm a little bit off put by them, I have to navigate that in the room. I still have to be the same therapist that I would be for somebody that I really, really enjoy my time with. And so I think that that's a challenging aspect of our work is just being able to stay as neutral as possible, not take sides, not decide that someone's the bad person in the relationship or the wrong person. And I think that it's actually really valuable when you're able to stay in that neutral place because that's where you see the most growth and change.
I was going to say that's also a really beneficial side to our job is that we get to help certain partners who might be trying to display their emotions through yelling, screaming, cussing at their partner. Like we get to kind of bring it back and really get to what's going on underneath that. So that's been really, really beneficial is just to be able to see couples understand each other more and get to some of that more like emotional, vulnerable level. And that's definitely the moment that I hold on the hard days is that when I have a couple just screaming at each other, remembering that they had shared a more vulnerable moment the week before. So that's something that's been awesome is kind of getting underneath someone who might be displaying as pretty hard or harsh towards us or towards their partner or towards the both times.
So in terms of entry-level jobs, as a marriage and family therapist, you really have to have a graduate degree in order to pursue that career. Most of the time, you are not able to do a whole bunch of clinical work and be in the therapy room unless you're pursuing a degree in marriage and family therapy or unless you have a degree. So with a bachelor's degree, and let's say you're not in a graduate program, you won't be able to find yourself doing specifically clinical therapy. I would say that the entry-level jobs you can get once you get your graduate degree or your master's degree in marriage and family therapy. A lot of times people go and work at agencies across Arizona or other states also, and that's just to pursue their independent licensure. You have to get 3,200 hours of direct and indirect hours with your client. And then you can then apply for your independent licensure, and that's the point where you don't have to work under a supervisor. You can technically open up your own practice if you'd like. Usually people go work in agencies. Courtney and I actually interned at a private practice, and then we were hired on from our internship. And so that is why we were able to maintain a position in a private practice. But there are very few private practices that take on licensed associate marriage and family therapists because they need to have a supervisor who is a licensed marriage and family therapist. Sometimes people do work in the private practice and then they seek supervision elsewhere, but you just have to kind of go around with the contracts and make sure that you're getting the right supervision.
So some advice that I could put down is to do something during your undergrad that makes you stand out from other candidates for grad school or for future jobs, is doing an unpaid internship, doing volunteer work, doing really anything that can kind of show that you're willing to go above and beyond, because that's really what helps you get into grad school. They see that you're willing to do that. The other piece that I had put is get to know your professors, because you need people to write letters of recommendation for you, and a lot of that needs to be educational. So those are kind of the two pieces of advice I put specifically for undergrad.
Other pieces of advice that I would say for going through the application process and your interview process, be sure you're aware of what's on your social media. You know, the interviewers, they do check their social media. Also, when you're doing clinical work, your clients are going to look you up and they're going to want to see who you are outside of the therapy office. And so I think that it's important to kind of rein in what you want your social media to portray you as. Another piece of advice would be to, would be to get as much experience in undergrad as possible. I think also reach out to people who have graduated from the program that you're applying to. You can do some research on LinkedIn or kind of go through your academic advisor and see if they can point you in the right direction and moving up with some people from the programs that you're interested in, just to get their take on their experience. I think that's it.
Hi everyone, my name is Emma Lauer. I'm an LMSW, so I have my master's in social work. I graduated with 2 bachelor's degrees from ASU in the fall of 2014. I studied psychology and English lit. I never had the plans to be an English teacher or anything like that. I just always loved English lit, so I studied it. So I graduated from high school and started college knowing that I really wanted to be a therapist. And the person who had inspired me to be a therapist was an LPC. She had her master's in counseling. So I started college totally convinced I was going to graduate, go get my master's in counseling and be a therapist. And then I got involved in a bunch of research labs as an undergrad. Jordan and I worked in my first research lab, and the grad student that we both worked with inspired me to consider doing my PhD in clinical psychology. So I spent 3 years thinking that I was going to do that. And by the time I was getting ready to graduate, I was so burnt out on research, and I hated statistics, and I was super scared of doing a 6-year PhD program. So I went to talk to the professor who was working above the grad student that we were working with, and I was telling him that I was freaking out because I didn't know what I was going to do. I couldn't do a PhD program. I think I'm just going to do my master's in counseling because that's what I was planning originally. And he was like, well, if you're going to do your master's, then you should do social work because it's much more flexible. And I was like, okay, so I guess I'm getting my master's in social work. But I knew nothing about social work. I knew like nothing about the program. So that's what I ended up doing right after I graduated. I got my master's in social work from ASU in 2017, and I ended up totally loving it. Ryan basically already covered all the reasons why it's so great. But so I had multiple interests in lots of fields like law and politics, and it kind of marries all this stuff in a really awesome way. So right now I'm working as a therapist in a private practice in Tempe. The practice is called Find Your Shine. There are 5 therapists total who work there. It's owned by an LCSW. Right now I'm a little over halfway towards getting my independent license. So I'm getting my supervision hours from her. When I first graduated with my MSW, my first job out of school was at a place called Devereaux, which is an agency. Like Alexia was saying, that's pretty typical. When you get your master's, you go work at an agency, some community mental health place. Devereaux specifically treats kids, so all my clients are children. And I was doing that for about a year and a half, and then I made this connection with Jamie Castillo, the one who owns Find Your Shine, back in September. And so since September, I've been doing Devereaux part-time while I build my caseload at the private practice. So now my goal is to be at the practice full-time, and right now I'm like, I think I have 28 clients or something, so I'm like almost there, I'm so close. But yeah, once I'm at a full caseload, then I'll just be there full-time. So at Devereaux, because it's an agency, these are kids from low socioeconomic backgrounds. A large portion of the kids on my caseload are they're in foster care. A lot of being involved with DCS, like Ryan alluded to. At the private practice, it's all private pay, which is a very different clientele. And a lot of people assume that means it's all wealthy clients, which is not. I have a lot of clients who aren't wealthy. Therapy is really important to them. Their care is really important, so they budget for it and they make it work. So it's very different, and it's equally rewarding and equally awesome. So as far as how communication is important, having really good writing skills, definitely. If a professor or someone has told you that you need to work on your writing, it's super important to like get that done now and try and work on it as best you can, because once you enter the workforce, it's going to be really, really hard to be successful at your job if you don't have strong writing skills. Being organized is super, super important. That's actually probably the best advice I could give, is just figure out a way to be really, really organized. Multiple people have alluded to not burning bridges. The reason that I'm able to build my practice while I work at Devereaux is because I have really good relationships with my supervisors there. They had never had a therapist go part-time at the agency before, but they were willing to make that accommodation for me because I never caused any problems for them, and I was really organized, and I got my notes on time, and all that good stuff. Rewarding aspects. There's so many rewarding aspects. A lot of people have already alluded to all of these, but there are a lot of things about the job that are just how I thought they would be. Like all the reasons I wanted to be a therapist, a lot of it ended up being true. So it's intellectually stimulating. I'm challenged every single day in the best way possible. I'm always learning. And then, like everyone else said, you get to be there for people during a really important time in their lives and help them make a really important difference. There are a ton of challenges. I definitely feel that the rewards far outweigh the challenges, but there are definitely a lot. So, Alexa, you were talking about this, not everyone is ready to change. When you work with kids, they're like all mandated clients, right? And so working with kids can be hard. It's hard. It's emotionally draining working with kids too, especially with a lot of DCS involvement. You're there to give people the tools to help facilitate change, but you can't create motivation, for example. And then on the other side, it's also hard to not take it personally when people aren't making the progress that you want to see, which is really frustrating. My supervisor reminds me all the time, like you're not as responsible for this person's care as you think you are, as you're taking on. As far as entry-level jobs, if you're an entry-level therapist, it's really common to work in these community mental health agencies. Another piece of advice I would have is to think outside the box as far as job opportunities and networking. Not a lot of people know that you can work in private practice as an associate level therapist, and it's an awesome gig. I love it so much, and it's definitely helping to sustain my motivation to be in this field. So thinking outside the box and remembering that you can go do stuff like that, I think is really important. Being bold and not being afraid to network. This woman, Jamie, who owns the practice, I knew of her through a friend of a friend. I'd never met her before, but I sent her an email and asked if she would go have coffee with me, and now I have this awesome job. So doing stuff like that, not being afraid to reach out like that is really important. And some really broad advice that I would give is to be vulnerable, because you don't know how much you don't know until you're in the job. I learn so much every single day, and every single day I just have to be open to growing and learning new things, and you're gonna suck at it when you first start off. Like I think back on my second year of grad school when I was in my internship, and that was my first clinical work ever, really. And I didn't like it, and I was so confused by not liking it because I was so convinced that I wanted to do this for so many years. And I had to remind myself, well, you're not good at it yet. Like you need to be patient, and it's gonna take a long time before you feel like you're good at this. So, yeah.
All right, let's thank our panelists. Thank you guys again so much for coming. We do have quite a bit of time for questions for our panelists as well. So if you have a question, please direct it to an individual so they know. So who has questions? Yes.
Okay, I have a couple of questions probably for I thought for a long time it was being messy. Except that I'm really interested in and then very I also like entrepreneurs, as well, and the right category for that. So, is there like this word?
I think what you're describing is almost exactly.
I thought like you got that's like 5%
I think any kind of certification like I said before, that looks true. They're going to be stand out on the resumes first, but more importantly, like I said before, the more training you get, the more knowledge you hold. Like Emma said, when you first start, you're going to think that you really suck at this, and I agree with you saying like you're like, I thought I was going to love this, and why don't I love it so much? And then you get more training, then you get certified on things, and become more comfortable in your role, and then you're like, wow, okay, I do love this. Like this is the work I wanted to do. So anything you can do to help get me to that space, I think is going to be important.
You mentioned mapping, so I'm curious if you wanted to work with couples.
Yeah, like I said, I really like the relationship aspect of it. And I really learned to be comfortable. The community, I think, and I need to play more with me. Last year,
I think a lot of that as a career therapist, the foundation of other models, so I would definitely suggest doing that. It's really helpful to have that background. Even if later into practicing you don't use it as much, it's still helpful. I think also another one to keep in mind is called emotional intelligence. That's by Sue Johnson. She's basically the frontier for couples therapy right now.
Awesome.
Over there? I think I really needed to direct the question too, but I wanted to know like what could you do like with like a sociology degree? Like if you wanted to get into social work or like marriage and family therapy.
I know for social work you can have a sociology background. You'll have to do the full 2-year program. So if you're a bachelor's in social work, you can do the expedited program. So it only takes you like a full calendar year, not a school calendar year, but a full calendar year. But if you come from a different background, you just have to do the 2 years.
You can also learn to
You can do essentially anything. Yeah.
Raise your hand high if you have a question. We have a question over here.
I was for counselor recently, and I was told that in a hospital or more in the medical system, it's best or possibly the only way to do it with the social work degree. I was hoping that some of you could just compare and contrast what like specialty your program is, or like what you think your program allows you to do more so than the others.
So I have a thought about this. So medical social work is a bit more competitive than other areas of social work. So the best way to do this, I think, is to have a medical social work internship during grad school. If you can secure that when you're in grad school, then that's a much easier way to get a job and then get started. I think they make more money than a lot of other entries, so it's more competitive. As far as other master's degrees and all that kind of, I'm not too sure about that. I don't think they do. Yeah. So social work and get the internship.
Yeah. And those are competitive positions too. Like you have to fight for them, so be prepared for that.
And then what would you say like is a specialty if you do like family medical or family relationship? Like what is like special about the platform and opportunities that alone offers out there? So ours, we have to do half of our hours with couples or families, so it's really just going to be more focused on like the relational concerns. So we always say like we stand out just with having more of that, like that we have to get our hours, half of our hours towards couples and families. So more of like the systemic roots. I will say that we actually do have a recent coworker who's just left our private practice to go work in Phoenix Children's Hospital. And she's kind of paving the way for family therapy within Phoenix Children's Hospital to work systemically with families and try and integrate family therapy for, the children who are battling whatever disease or illness that they're going through, and also working with the families. So a lot of times, from what I understand, the work is with kind of the child that's experiencing the illness or disease, and there's not so much of a focus on the people who are also experiencing and going through that with them. So there's a possibility of that becoming a new pathway, I think, for NFTs.
And I think kind of going off of that, there's such a push, including from federal money now. Soon places won't be federally funded unless they start having integrated care. So like you're saying, we can't just focus on physical health and just mental health. That has to be both of them at the same time. So you should start kind of broadening your subject a little bit. At Touchstone, we just added our own pediatrician on staff. So I'm able to call him, email him, staff with him about that stuff. So like you're saying, it's really important and you're working with the family. So you really got to broaden your scope.
Thank you. In the back? Yeah.
I have a question for Ryan. I am graduating in 2020 with a psychology bachelor, and I eventually plan on pursuing my degree in social work. But my plan now is to not immediately go into graduate school. And from what you've talked about managing bachelor graduates, caseworkers, but from what I've heard from other people, you usually don't get much of an opportunities to practice and prepare you for graduate school and further experiences if you don't have a graduate degree or if you're not pursuing one. So what would be your suggestion for me? Maybe should I do part-time at graduate school? Should I do something like that? Or what kind of internship should I be looking for if I do eventually not want to get a graduate degree?
Yeah, so I did take a gap year between my undergrad and my grad school. And so I did rehabilitation work at a small nonprofit place. So I was going into families' homes, helping them with social skills. So that was something I was definitely able to do. And I learned a lot because I was working with kids with developmental needs. I will say I don't feel like I had the same support as I had working on those larger scales. But you can still get experience with the bachelor's. I think actually probably the people that helped us most in our master's program were those people who had been working for a long time, usually in case management. They bring you such a realistic, it's nice to read about things and have your professor talk about them, but when your fellow classmates are sharing their real stories, those are usually from people who they're in their master's now, so they've only been working, they've only been doing case management. When I was doing my internship at Southwest, I was working in an adult SMI clinic. The people who were running groups only had their bachelor's. They obviously had supervisors and everything, but those were the people that were running. They did everything. They were incredible. And those were the people that only had bachelors. And now I know some of those people are going to get their masters and everything. So there's definitely job opportunities. Are you going to get the one-on-one, I'm going to be a therapist with this family or this individual? No, you can't do that. But you can definitely get so much experience and clinical experience. And I think that really informs you because sometimes you get thrown into this therapy world or just this family world, and you are totally lost. You go from books to real life humans who have real life problems, and you are the person they're turning to. And if you can get even a little bit of experience to help you build that, so that when you're in classes, you can go, oh, that reminds me of this client I had, or that reminds me of this family. You can really start putting the application piece to what you're learning in books. I think that's invaluable.
Yeah, there's lots of jobs. I just met with the fire department with clients in the crisis response. Person who's hired with the fire department is bachelor's level in psychology, and he goes out when there's a fire disaster or a car accident and supports the family and gives them resources, the right jobs, and therapy, and stuff like that. Because all the inpatient facilities have bachelor's level. In the clinical world, we're considered a behavioral health technician, PhD position. So anything that has a PhD position is more clinical in the behavioral health world, and you only need to have a bachelor's degree for any of those jobs. So there's lots of them out there. Lots of them.
Thank you.
Anything on the part of the question? Yes.
It's really directed towards all of you. It's like a personal question, but you guys spoke on the neutrality of your practices and being neutral at all points in times, and that typically requires a level of not a lot of emotion. And I was wondering, how do you guys deal with keeping emotion as a part of your lives when you work and you don't use an abundance of emotion every day? How do you maintain having emotional aspects about yourselves?
So I bring emotion to my sessions all the time, like in an appropriate therapeutic way, obviously. But I think that when you're a therapist, that's part of the learning curve when you actually start doing the job and you start getting experience, is learning how to not like shut yourself off and create that barrier. Because the research shows that the one really important change factor for treatment, for getting better, is the relationship between the therapist and the client. Like, you can use any modality, you can use, I mean, the treatment you use matters, obviously, but if that relationship isn't there, then the person's not gonna get better, or it's gonna happen like really, really slowly. So you have to like be a human being in sessions, and you have to relate to your clients. And there have been, this has only happened a small handful of times with it, like there are gonna be times when you tear up during session or something, and you have to show vulnerability with your clients. So it's actually interesting that you say that, because I feel like it's made my home life more, like it brings more connection to the rest of my life because I'm practicing it every day at work. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And she stated that you have to start learning when it's therapeutic to provide emotion. And then the other piece is the separation is, can you tolerate them being emotional? So sometimes I know clients need to have time to express some really intense grief or whatever, and can I sit with them without freaking out and becoming a puddle myself? If I become that puddle, then they're not going to feel safe with me to express that. They need somebody strong to go, okay, we're going to get through this and it's going to be okay. So there's a difference between the therapeutic expression of emotion and tolerating a client's emotion. And then we've also all talked about self-care, like some days are hell. I had a client who came in for an hour last week for the first time, and he vomited trauma the entire hour. And I felt like I had to clean my whole office after. And then that's when I know that I need to do a lot of self-care that day, and I need to go home and do my hot bubble bath or whatever it is I do for self-care. So there's differences with all of that are important pieces that you learn as you go.
One other thing I want to add is that one thing that's super important in your job as a therapist is that you're showing your client that their feelings are okay. And so if you like put up walls and you're totally freaked out by them showing emotion, that's signaling to them that their emotion's like not okay somehow. And that's the opposite of what you're.
Or it's too much.
Right.
And if it's too much for you, then obviously how can they handle it?
Right.
Yeah. I would also say supervision. I cannot stress how important supervision is. That is your chance where after you've been holding the space for your clients or your family for so long, and then you can go down into the home and be like, oh my goodness, like this just happened and I cannot even put words to it right now. If you don't have a good relationship with your supervisor, that's going to be really hard. And I have not had good supervisors, and I've had great supervisors, and I'm currently with a great supervisor. And that helps you kind of hold it while you're in session if you need to, and then you can feel it later. But with supervision is better than, just exploding when you're home, in front of your significant other who has no idea what you're talking about or what's going on. So supervision is key.
I think also to speak to the neutrality piece, being neutral doesn't always mean that you have to have like a blank face. It just means that you are supporting the client in the best way possible. So for our work specifically, when we're working with a couple, we never have the end goal of making sure this couple stays together. We have the end goal of making sure that we help this couple get to the best point possible for them. And so that's how we remain neutral We don't ever throw our own beliefs or values in their face or expectations on them, so that they can actually feel comfortable working with us.
This is kind of directed towards everyone and like your experience in grad school. I wanted to know if you worked in grad school and if you suggest it. Just kind of like what was your experience with working
So I worked like 30 hours a week while doing my internship, and I would not recommend it at all. But that was kind of the life stage I was at, as I was getting married that year, and just like a lot of craziness. But if you don't have to work, I wouldn't, because it meant a lot of late nights doing homework, which you already normally have in grad school. It'd just be like 7 late nights instead of like 5 or 6. So I would say like very part-time if you do work, at least for our program, because it was also only 18 months, so it was accelerated. But obviously you have to work, and you'll make it work on little sleep and lots of coffee. So
Yeah, definitely look at program length too. You can choose to do the full time 2-year program, but there's also a 3-year option, so you're taking it at a less intense pace, so you can work. Usually in our master's program, you're doing classes and your internship at the same time for both years. So some programs have it so you just do schoolwork and then you do your field work, but you're doing both at the same time. So you'll have 2 full year internships. I know some people who instead do summer internships and do that kind of full time to remedy the fact that they hadn't been doing it the whole year. There's ways, talk to your advisor about it. I would suggest if you don't have to, don't really focus on your work. My second year, I decided to take very part-time at my old internship. So my second year, I got a new internship, but was working a little bit for my old internship, and that seemed to be enough. It was just, that was okay for me, but it's definitely a shock. If you're not used to kind of rigorous reading and writing, it's going to take up a lot of time. So be prepared for that.
Yeah, I worked part-time, so I was a TA, and I did like dog sitting and a couple little miscellaneous things like that weren't too intense. So I worked probably about 15 hours a week, but that's probably the ideal situation, I think, is capping it at about that. But it's not always ideal, so you gotta do what works for you.
Any other questions? Okay, we have time for a couple more. Yeah.
So my question is for Alexia. I know how you mentioned a little bit earlier about how getting like the internship with private practice is a little more difficult just because of confidentiality reasons. I know I've had that issue in the past when I've reached out to different companies just because of confidentiality. How would you say is the best way of going about reaching, like, in terms of potentially getting an internship with a private practice just because of confidentiality and other things like that?
So I would say the best way to go that route is to possibly suggest doing like clerical admin work at a private practice. I think that's really the only way you'll get that exposure to the private practice sector. I do think that it would still be valuable for you to get an internship at a community health agency or something along those lines, just because it does give you that exposure. But it's pretty minimal in terms of what private practice has to offer for internships, unfortunately.
I would also recommend joining Facebook groups and making sure you're involved in stuff like that, because every once in a while I see on like the AZ Mental Health Professionals page, someone will post saying that they are looking for an intern at their private practice, and it's sort of it's a very unusual opportunity, and that's where, because it's unusual, they go through kind of unusual routes to advertise it, if that makes sense. So making sure you're in tune with stuff like that will be helpful.
All right, we have time for about 2 more questions.
Okay, so this question's for the panelists who are like social work. So basically, when we're told about like social work, we could like read up on it or be taught about like what a social worker does, but you never really know until like you are in those shoes. So from you guys, like what is like a typical day in social work, or what is different that you feel social work does than any other type of field in psychology?
I think it's really about, so a typical day for me, I get to create my own schedule. That's one of my favorite parts of my job. And so I have my therapy appointments, but I also have CFTs, so child family meetings, and then I staff with care coordinators. And I think that staffing piece is some of the most important pieces because me and my care coordinator are going over, I can't work with this kid's trauma right now because they don't have food on their table. What resources can we give them? So again, with that social work piece, you're like really thinking about what are some other offerings in the area that can help them. Last week we found a family low-income housing before they were living in a homeless shelter. They can't do effective trauma work when my family doesn't know where they're sleeping every night. So really being able to know what other resources are in your community, like the people here, and being able to direct people. My agency at Touchstone only does birth to 18. I work with the families for sure. Caregivers are always in my sessions. I'm always working with foster families. Family is so important. Relationships are so important. But that means that adults can't get their own individual care. So that's also for me to know where I can direct them to go get if I feel like our work isn't enough and they need to get some of their own work. Kind of, again, getting all those references and really pooling everybody's information. So that staffing piece is where I find where my social workness really comes out, and the advocacy piece, especially when I'm working with schools and in the courts, really fighting and really knowing the policies and knowing what schools can and can't do, and really fighting for your kiddos. Those are the two places I feel like I'm using it the most.
I would say too that it depends so much on what you're doing in social work because it's such a huge field and there's so many different types of jobs that you can do and they're all going to be so different. So I would kind of reach out to people who are doing the stuff that you're interested in and then ask around in that group and see kind of what their days look like. My day at Devereaux is basically identical to what Ryan just described. We were all still birth to 18 at Devereaux. And then at the private practice, it's basically like 90-95% spent in therapy, and then I've got my supervision time, individual and group supervision, and I spend a tiny bit of time writing notes, and like that's it. So it really depends on what you're doing. When I also in grad school for a little bit volunteered with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office as a victim advocate, which was a whole different thing. They had masters in social work interns working there, so it totally depends on what you're doing.
Thank you. Yes. This is more of a big question. What would you guys say is the real difference between therapy, counseling, and clinical?
Nothing. They're all just different terms.
Yeah. Some of you were saying like you can do therapy or counseling if you don't have your master's yet. Like you can't do therapy.
So earlier they were talking about how the BHT is the bachelor, but people do clinical work, which I think generally means like they get face-to-face time with the clients, but they're not doing therapy. But we also use clinical work to prescribe therapy, so it's kind of confusing, but yeah. But yeah, they basically all mean the same thing.
I'll ask that a little bit too, but actually I'm having a study as well. I'm very passionate about the field. And sometimes like school counselors, like they don't necessarily do therapy. They're not like licensed as therapists, so definitely feel that like therapy and counseling is used interchangeably, but they are a little bit different. All right, we have time for about one more question. Okay, last one.
So I am a justice studies major, and I recently kind of discovered that I want to go into social work. Do you guys have trouble getting into that field, like for a master's? Okay.
Especially, I don't know if you want to do like direct or pack work, but pack work is awesome too, but you could still do it in the field if you want to do direct.
PAC is the concentration from the MSW program of policy administration and community advocacy. That's the concentration I did, but it doesn't like not allow you to license. All right, everyone, thank you so much.